What is the scariest, creepiest outdoors experience you've ever had? Part 1. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. Went on a hiking date with a girl. Got lost in the Sequoia National Park. Helicopters were looking for us. Slept in the snow without any winter or sleep gear. It was so cold, we couldn't sleep because shivering would wake us up. This was also bear territory. Approximately 8,000 to 10,000 feet elevation with no sleep for 48 hours and no food for 36 hours. Finally slid down a 70-degree rock cliff to a lake with a known trail. When we made it out, the rangers asked us our route. Made the ranger say, "Wow," and no one ever did that before. BTW. Married the girl and our first kid is due on March 14th. This happened to my friend, who was working as a police officer at the time. We shall call my friend Tom. Anyways, Tom had just begun working as an officer and as a result he got stuck with lousy shifts. Tom worked a neighborhood where just about nothing bad ever happened, but working graveyard shifts at parks in the area can still be pretty creepy. Usually though, he would just find a couple stoners hanging out on a swing set. This one night, Tom had a shift at a local park he didn't often go to. It's about 2 a.m. and his only job is to just make sure no one is around and all is well. As he is walking around the outskirts of the woods, he sees one man just standing with his back facing him on the edge of the darkness of the woods. He yelled out to the man, "Hey, you, what are you doing? Come over here right now." The man turned and smiled at him. Then he dashed into the woods. Without really thinking, Tom sprinted after him. The guy was booking it, leaping over branches and ducking under fallen trees like a pro. Tom is an extremely athletic guy, but this man was a different level. As Tom finally catches the guy, he again yells out to him. The man smiles once again, then books it once again. Tom kept after him but was always a good 10 to 15 feet behind this guy. Finally, they reach a clearing in the woods. Tom's adrenaline is running low and it's taking all his power to keep screaming for the guy to stop. The guy turns and smiles once more. The guy books it over a hill, seemingly a step slower this time. Tom draws his gun and powers up the hill. The guy was gone. According to Tom, it was literally as if he disappeared. There was no way he could have escaped normally. To this day Tom recounts it as an encounter with a very sinister paranormal being. First post ever on Reddit, but had to post this when I saw this question. A year after high school, my best friend was killed in a car accident. I would visit his grave on occasion and just sit there and think about things. The cemetery is outside of town and isolated, with some nice groves of trees and such. It is a rural area. I was off at college so I didn't get back to often, but about a year later I came back and wanted to visit. It was late afternoon when I got there and I was just sitting there thinking about life and such. There was a fresh grave a couple of spots away from his covered in straw while the grass grew back. As I sat there the sun started to set and I was watching the sunset and actually enjoying the quiet and the view. I heard something moving and looked around. I noticed the straw on the fresh grave move a little bit. At first I thought it was just my eyes playing a trick on me, the shadows moving in the setting sun kind of thing. It moved again and this time I knew it wasn't my imagination. I stood up and stared at the spot intently. I thought to myself, this is not real, as visions of old horror movies started going through my head. Suddenly the straw exploded up into the air. I jumped. I have no idea what I said, but up out of the exploding straw I saw a chipmunk flying through the air. It landed on the ground and took off running. I stood there for a moment with my heart racing and thought to myself, I wish I had a gun right now because that would be one dead chipmunk. Last summer I went camping with a few friends in Algonquin Park in Ontario. It's amazing. You pay to rent a site in the park and then you portage as much as you like and find an empty spot. None of the spots are near each other, so you really do feel quite alone out there. Anyway, we get to our spot, we set up, we get a fire lit and so on. We'd been warned that there had been a few bear sighting in the area, so take the usual precautions. Once it got dark, one of the girls started getting a little freaked out. Didn't want to walk to her tent on her own and just felt a bit uneasy. It's understandable, when you walk away from the fire, the darkness completely swallows you. So at one stage, this girl needs to pee and obviously asks for an escort. One of the guys got up and started walking with her and suddenly stops and says, "There's someone out there." The girl assumes he's just trying to mess with her, but he looks at her, then back at us, with an extremely convincing panicked expression. We all assume he's full of shit. Still, it's enough to get everyone a little riled up. I'm about to chastise him for messing with someone who's clearly not enjoying it when we all hear a few twigs snapping. It's startling, but we assume it's an animal, though that in itself is quite jarring. Out of nowhere, this crazed shirtless dude with a beard and long messy hair comes sprinting towards us. I don't think I've ever been so close to pissing myself. I was completely frozen and I'm not usually particularly jumpy. Also, there's not that much light, so first you just see a shape coming towards you rapidly. This is so unnecessarily drawn out, sorry. Anyway, the dude stops, holds up his arms and says something about finding civilization. Turns out he's tripping balls and decided to leave his campsite and go for a midnight paddle and ended up near our site. We invited him to chill with us, mostly so we wouldn't be reading about a tragic drowning in the news shortly thereafter. The guy falls asleep in one of our hammocks and is gone the next morning. I assume he found his way home. Sorry for the rambling and poor syntax. I'm tired. TLDR. Some guy on mushrooms came out of nowhere and scared the shit of our group while we were camping. I was sitting in a deer stand someone had left up after the season was over. Just relaxing and watching wildlife. When it started getting dark, I decided to climb down. I ended up falling and hitting my neck on a limb on the way down. Knocked me the fuck out. I woke up sometime later after the sun had gone down, covered in fire ants. There was a mound at the bottom of the tree. I didn't have an allergy, but it hurt like hell. I tried dusting them off, but there was too many. I ran through the woods for a half-mile to my brother's house where I lived, jumped the fence and used the water hose to rinse them all off. I was screaming so much, my brother came out and helped me wash them off. I got sick as a dog from all the bites, stings. It hurt so freaking bad. Advice: don't pass out on a fire ant mound. Was camping in Wyoming. In the middle of the night we hear the sounds of a number of large animals right outside the tent. We had read that we were camping in an area where bears are common. One of the large animals rubs up right against the tent. We can hear it breathing and sniffing around. Then another on the other side of the tent leans up against it. GF and I are sitting upright trying not to make a sound for we are scared shitless. Eventually the animals move away and at this point it's like 4:30 a.m. So we decide, fuck it, let's pack and get the hell out of here. We start packing up and all of a sudden hear a collection of animals moving through the woods right behind us. We sprinted to the car, me in the driver's seat, her in the passenger, and locked the doors. I have my foot on the brake pedal and in the rear view mirror I see a cow and her calf. A fucking cow. Not a bear. We started laughing hysterically. Asterisk. Out jogging on the mud lanes, the lights failing quick, so visibility is low, run up a mud hill blocking the track. As I get to the top I see a little girl, creature thing, whatever, I panicked, rolled, fell down the hill. I am miles away from any civilization out on the hunting fields. Scared shitless. Climb back up and peer over the top and this thing's just standing there staring at me. Threw a lump of mud at it, stang metallic sound rings out. Turns out it was a gas bottle. Laughed my ass off. Repost, of an old cabin experience I had. Still my scariest experience. I'll be the first to say that all this stuff could have taken place in my head. The mind is a freaky thing and can play some pretty trippy tricks on you. Sorry for the length. Whenever I was scared as a kid my dad had always told me that in life, you should not be scared of ghosts. Fear the living because they can actually hurt you. In my late teenage years I came into some money after my father committed suicide and I received an inheritance from him. At time of my dad's passing he and my mom owned a cabin up in Oregon by Mount Bachelor. The cabin had been put up for sale since my mom could no longer afford the payments and renting it out was not covering the payments either. The cabin was set to go on the market for sale in less than a month and was in the process of finalizing all the paperwork with the realtor and lawyer. So for that month's time the cabin was not going to be rented out any longer and was going to be vacant. I saw this as a chance to get away for a while and clear my head in light of all the things going on. I quit work, packed up my snowboarding gear, grabbed my dog and headed up in my dad's car, that he had willed to me, to the cabin. Now this was our family cabin that my parents rented out throughout the year when we were not using it. I had keys to the cabin and also had the code for the alarm, so I did not feel the need to stop at the rental management company and advise them of my stay. This has nothing to do with the coming story, but felt the need to mention it anyway. My first 2 days at the cabin were normal and nothing out of the unusual happened. Spent my days playing with my dog in the snow, snowboarding, and the evenings playing PlayStation or listening to music, drinking and smoking out on the balcony. Had already stocked up on food, cigarettes and liquor, so I was pretty much a shut-in aside from the occasional out to hit the slopes. With my dog as company and DVDs, PlayStation as entertainment, I was quite content and started to feel relaxed after all the drama that had preceded my outing. The cabin itself was 2 stories. Bottom story had the living room and a side guest bedroom along with small kitchen. Upstairs had another 2 rooms along with a walkout balcony attached to the master bedroom. Most my time there was spent either in the living room, kitchen or master bedroom. I never ventured into the other rooms and always kept the doors leading into them shut. Open doors to dark rooms always creeped me out. Anyhow, the 3rd day came around and I was going through my usual routine of playing with my dog. His name was Midnight, by the way, and he also since passed, playing games and watching DVDs. That day it was pretty heavy snowfall, so I did not feel like trekking down the hill to the main road in my car and decided to stay in. That's when things started getting a bit weird. In our area there were only 2 other cabins adjacent to ours. Maybe a block away from each other. All other cabins aside from these 2 were around a mile away from ours. Surrounding us was mostly forest and very tall pine trees, tall. This is important later on. Both these cabins were empty, and from the past couple of days I knew that no one was currently staying there. Gave enough background and am going to jump to the weirdness. Around midday while outside with my dog I noticed what looked like footprints in the snow around the area surrounding our cabin. It was still snowing, so the footprints looked semi-fresh, like someone had been there in the last 20 to 30 minutes before me. I thought that maybe someone was staying in the cabin near me that I may not have noticed. Maybe they were shut-ins like me. Alright. Whatever. The prints lead away from my cabin and they disappeared in the snow towards the denser part of the trees. Disregarded the footprints and went back inside. Nighttime came around and decided to head to bed. My dog Midnight was laying on the bed with me when I noticed his ears perk up to a standstill, listening position. This was followed by him quickly jumping off the bed and running downstairs to the living room. I lay in bed and stayed silent. I was kinda freaked out, and could hear him moving around downstairs back and forth. After around 5 minutes he ran back upstairs to me and started to do his doggy dance for the sign that he had to pee or that he wanted to go outside. Shit, well fine. I can't say no to him, so we both went downstairs to the outside driveway for him to his thing. Only, he didn't want to pee. As soon as we were outside he started to pull on his leash trying to drag me to where he wanted to go. He kept looking into the dense part of the trees where the prints had been earlier. But he also kept sniffing the side of the house and looking up towards the roof. After he figured out that I was not going to go to where he wanted, he sat himself down and just stared into the darkness. A bit unusual for him, but alright. Maybe there are forest animals out there that he wants to chase down. But fuck this. Did not want to chance anything, so I pulled him back inside and we both headed back upstairs. Around half an hour later I was lying in bed when I heard what sounded like hooves walking on my roof. It was only a series of around 6 steps, and I rationalized that it could be a pine cone falling from a tree onto the roof, or maybe a kind-hearted forest animal running around. But here's the thing. The steps seemed to be spaced apart like a man-length stride. So it was really freaking me out. Midnight also heard the noise and was quick to run to the balcony screen door expecting for me to let him out. Alright, you know what, I'm a tough guy and at the time considered myself to be fairly well built and strong enough to handle myself. So I grabbed my coat and shoes along with my cigarettes and flashlight and went out onto the balcony. Fuck it, right? As soon as I was outside I lit up my cigarette and started canvassing the roof with my light. Nothing there and the snow on top was undisturbed. Weird, must have been all my head? What about Midnight hearing the noise? Maybe he was feeding off my fear or paranoia. I started to calm down and relax again. By the way, I am shaking right now and my heart is beating hard as I am typing this next bit. My eyes started to adjust to the darkness and I kept smoking and just staring at the stars and trees next to our cabin. That's when I saw it. In a tree that was a little taller than our cabin and around 20 feet from the balcony I saw what looked like a man crouched in a squatting position in between 2 branches. It was squatted on one branch and its arms were extended above its head holding onto the branch above it. Fuck me. What the fuck is that? I wasn't sure if I was really seeing this thing and stood just staring and sat there motionless. I noticed Midnight stand up and start pacing behind me and lightly barking at the same time. The thing still did not move. I put my cigarette out and was debating on shining the light in the thing's direction, but something in my head kept screaming not to. So I walked backwards to the inside of the room and pulled Midnight with me. Once inside, I locked the door and shined the light in the thing's direction, but there was nothing there. I shut the curtains to the screen door and retreated back to bed. But later on in the night, I heard light tapping at the screen door, like someone was tapping on the glass with their fingers. It was consistent and did not stop for nearly an hour. Midnight seemed to stare at the door, but he wouldn't go near it anymore. The weirdest part was that I had a feeling like someone was inviting me to open the door. But at the same time, I kept hearing my dad's voice in my head telling me to stay in bed and not do it. I listened to my dad's voice and just stayed where I was. Passed out eventually and woke up in the morning and everything was normal. The rest of week I spent there was non-eventful and nothing else out of the ordinary happened. I totally admit that it could have been all in my head. A lot of stuff was going on at the time, so I was pretty fucked up from all the drama. I was in northern Sweden on a boat with a group of Boy Scouts. We camped on an island and it was getting dark while we gathered wood for the campfire. We couldn't see anything past a meter, so we constantly talked to orientate. We didn't really understand anything, but it was about hearing the voices to find back. After a while I realized there were 7 voices. We were 6 people, including me, and it was a lonely island without others on it. We were going in groups of 2 and everyone heard that additional voice. We didn't sleep that night.